The Coca-Cola Company, Keurig Dr. Pepper, and PepsiCo are bringing consumers more choices with less sugar than ever before. In fact, nearly 60% of beverages sold contain zero sugar. Visit balanceus.org to learn more.
This is Dream Power Radio, the place where your dreams turn into reality. Here is your host, Debbie Spector-Weissman.
Welcome, welcome, welcome to Dream Power Radio on the Amazing Women and Men of Power Network, the world's leading positive programming network powered by Raven International. I'm your host, certified Dream Life coach, Debbie Spector-Weissman. This is the show where we talk about dreams, both daytime and nighttime dreams, and how you can use them to make the internal shift to a life you love. Well, I don't know about you, but now that we're in the holiday season, my thoughts turn to family. And when I think of family, I naturally think of kids. So I thought it would be a good idea to focus today's show on children and how you can have the best dream life experience with your kids. I'm a parent, so I know how it could be. You start off with the best intentions to create a perfect environment for your children. And then life happens. And all those clever plans go right out the window, right? I've been there, so I know. My kids are grown now, and I've made plenty of mistakes, believe me. But the funny thing is, I also did some things right. I think I did. My kids are healthy and productive. They haven't killed anyone or become politicians. And one even has kids of her own. Well, my guest today, Betsy Chasse, also has children, and she's an expert on conscious parenting. What can I say about Betsy? She's a filmmaker, one of the creators of the groundbreaking film, What the Bleep Do We Know? And she's a producer and director of so many other provocative films. She's also been a distributor, a book publisher, an entrepreneur, and she's an author of several books, including the best-selling Tipping Sacred Cows, and co-author with me of a book that takes a humorous look at conscious parenting called It Came Out of My Vagina, Now What? Well, Betsy Chasse, welcome to Dream Power Radio.
Thank you so much for having me, Debbie. You're an amazing mom, and you are my mom mentor. So there you go.
Well, I actually think I had a lot to learn from you. If you were a mother when I was, my children were younger and I was a more active parent, I would have emulated you because there's a lot of stuff I've learned from you after the fact.
Wow. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. I try. My children still sometimes like me, so I think I'm doing all right.
I think so. We actually poked fun a little bit of parenting in our book that we did, but there's a serious side to it as well. We did, and that was about the concept of conscious parenting. So, what's your take on conscious parenting? How would you describe it?
Yeah, let me just say this. I think it was important. I think, you and I made the book funny because there's so many books out there about parenting that scare the bejesus out of any, especially young moms. And so I remember you and I really wanted to put a book out there that moms could relax and enjoy and laugh at while they were learning something. Because you and I both know you learn when you laugh. And so we wanted to share about conscious parenting, which to me, there's lots of cool definitions of it, but essentially to me, conscious parenting is the idea that you listen to your kids. You allow them to grow up their own way. Okay, listen, that doesn't mean that I let them, jump off cliffs and do crazy things, but I listen to them and who they are and who they want to be, and I let them guide me more than me trying to control and guide them, usually. It's getting a little harder as they get older, but that's the theory anyway.
Yeah, I was going to say, Now you've got a tween and a teenager now. And so what's the biggest
Woo!
difference for you now as opposed to when they were much younger?
Well, I raised my kids to communicate, to say how they feel, and to question things. I would advise all moms to do that, but then add this piece to the sentence, accept your mother to the end of it. Because now, my kids, they want to know why, and they have an opinion, and they have a thought about it. And the practice that I have to do right now is to remember that I encouraged this in them and that I asked for it. So that would be the tough time.
Well, especially in the teenage years when they're all about questioning and pushing those limits as far as they can. And
Well, and they know everything. Like, that's the thing. Sometimes my daughter, I get so frustrated, but then I remember in my head, I have to go, Betsy, when you were 14, 15, 16, you knew everything. And so she knows everything and she wants to figure it out on her own. And so the conscious parent in me has to constantly say, offer help. Like, my daughter's dealing with something at school. I can offer help. I can say, hey, do you want me to get involved, or do you want me? No, I want to do it myself. And then I have to respect that. I have to respect that, and then I have to observe and be present and aware to make sure that everything's moving forward. And the truth is, it usually does. It usually does. And so that's what I remind myself. It's like, see, I could have been that pushy parent or that helicopter parent who had to get involved and had to fix everything and blah, blah, blah. But, she stands on her, I want to figure this out on my own. And I have to respect that.
One thing is that, I know your kids and they are quite different. So do you think your parenting style is different with each of them?
Well, yes, because they're different. So that's the thing about conscious parenting. It's like, you and I talked about this when we both had babies, and I remember telling you that, Alora told me who she was going to be within the first 10 minutes of knowing her on this planet. She showed up loud and ready to communicate what she needed, what she wanted, when she wanted it, and she better darn well get it. And that's just who she was from a baby. And Max was a little more chill, a little more mellow. He's one of those like holds it all in and blows it up kind of kids, right? And so that was like, for him, Max would be fine all day long, and then every day at 5:00 he would scream for an hour. And as a young adult, he's the kind of guy who doesn't express, gets kind of quiet, and then all of a sudden loses his cookies. So I learned who they were going to be within the first days of knowing them, really. And so the parenting style is different because they're different.
And that's really the key, to really see that they're not the same person, and that you do have to adjust to their differences, and also to respect their differences, that they are their own individuals and they're not just, little kids who you get to boss around.
Right. Well, and it's interesting because sometimes, one of them will say, you don't do this with Alora, or you don't do that to Max. And I would say, well, that's because it won't work on them. They're different.
For me, the world today is so different from when I was raising my kids. I mean, I didn't have to deal with iPhones or social media, blatant bullying, sexual assault, and any of that stuff. How do you navigate through all of that today with your kids?
So, I started something when my kids were young, and we don't do it as much now, but I'm grateful that in this moment still, my daughter might get annoyed with me at some point or another and say, I'm not going to tell you anything anymore, but then the next day she'll tell me what's going on. And it's because when they were little, and I mean by like 3, 4, 5, and 6, I would do this thing every night at bedtime where I would say, okay, we're going to lay down and you get to talk, and I don't get to say anything. I don't judge. I don't have an opinion. I'll ask if you want any advice, but it's really up to you. And so I created the space for them to be able to communicate with me. Now, my daughter's still great. She still shares. My son, I have to pull it out of him a little bit, but they've always been able to know that they can tell me what they need to tell me, and that I'm pretty good about not being judgmental, and that usually my advice is pretty good. And if I give them advice and they say that's terrible advice, I kind of just go, okay. So that's one piece of it. The other piece that I tell parents all the time, and is that so my kids actually got devices when they were young. I know I'm supposed to be one of those granola mamas who doesn't let their kids touch devices and all that kind of stuff. But the reality is I felt really hypocritical of sitting there on my phone and computer for work and not allowing them, having them have it. And I'm divorced, and it was one of the ways that I could communicate with my kids. So when they were young, I handed them their devices and I said, here's the deal. I will always have access to this device. And so I think it's interesting because my kids have grown up with me having every password, approving every app, having access to every app, that they know that's part of the contract of having that device. And interestingly enough, it's actually been really helpful. There was a time where, I'm logged in on my phone to lots of the apps that my kids use. And I saw a message go by on Instagram, and I saw one of Alora's friends, not by Alora, one of the things they have a tendency to do is they do these crazy big group chats where they just add kids in and you don't really know whether you want to be added or not. And so there was this group chat, and one of Alora's friends was being bullied. And I looked at it, and it was really reassuring because I went inside to tell Alora, because she just turns those things off usually. And she was coming down the stairs to show me because she wanted to know what to do. So again, it was because I have a really open line of communication. And believe me, my daughter and I can have an argument and yell at each other, but she knows that I've got her back. And because I've always had access to everything on their devices, it doesn't feel, she knows that most people will say, oh, well, your kid's going to think you don't trust them. Because of situations like that, and I've never broken that trust. I've never, when I see something that might be, what's my daughter doing on Instagram? Who's she messaging? I've never broken the trust. And I'm there for her when she needs it. She doesn't see it that way. She sees it as a support system. And, the reality is nowadays with my daughter, I turned off the notifications. I check it in around once a month to see what's going on. And, she's also just, I think because I work in the world of social media, my kids have been around the power of social media and what it's capable of. So they have a deep respect for it. They understand what an Instagram post has the potential to do. And so they've been taught that ever since, their entry into it. So I think they have a respect for it as well.
Mm-hmm. Another thing that's come up in recent years and kind of also has me concerned is the growth of virtual reality. I have this concern that, more and more kids are going to be spending all of their time, in the virtual reality world and not experience the world that you and I grew up in. What is your take on that?
So I have two takes on that might not be very popular. So my son wanted to get certain video games on the Xbox. And I was like, no, it's not good for your brain, blah, 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 da, da, da. So this is how my kids are. My son went out and pulled all the scientific research on kids and video games, and then broke it all down and created a 12-point document for me about how I was wrong. And so that's really hard to argue with because he provided the data. And excuse me, again, it really comes down to values. Part of conscious parenting is teaching your kids to know what their values are, to know what their ethics are, and to really be able to communicate that and to check in with that often and to ask themselves, is what I'm doing fit with my heart, my soul, my passion, it does it make me feel happy? Does it make me feel good, or does it make me not feel good? And when kids really understand that, then I worry less about my kids and what they might do. They might do something as a mistake because they didn't know. And I'm so aware that something happened the other day where I was like, well, that's kind of not okay. What do you think about that? And they were like, now that I think about it, I didn't like that. I'm not going to do that anymore. So again, I didn't tell him that's bad. You should never do that. I just asked him, well, how does that fit with your core value of who you are? Is that in alignment with that? Or do you think that might be a little off center? And they check in. And you know what? If it is with their value, they go, no, here it is, and here's why. The other thing is, I think, my daughter said something to me a couple of years ago that was really interesting. She was in this big phase of selfies, okay? And somebody else in her life had made fun of it and joked and said, oh, you're just getting self-absorbed, blah, 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 blah. And I asked her, I said, so what do you think about that? Do you think that that's true, or what are your thoughts? And she said, selfies are my generation's way of communicating. It's sort of one of our tools. And so when you say to me that you're making fun of it or you diminish it, you're not understanding my experience in life. And so when parents are concerned about, oh, they're getting too much screen time, I just asked them, I said, well, what kind of values have you instilled in them? And are you checking in on that? And the other thing is, we have to honor their reality. It's like, just because it's different than ours doesn't make ours better. So, my kid today got out of school early. He did all of his homework. He played basketball in school. He ran around in school. I said, what do you want to do when you get home? And he goes, I haven't played on my video game for a couple of days. I want to sit there for a few hours and play on my video game. And I totally let him. I didn't do I don't typically do the whole, you only get this much screen time and it's very controlled. Because the thing that I've learned with my kids especially is that when I start doing that, they start wanting it more. And they start acting out because they don't have it. Whereas if their value is, I like to be outside, I like to connect with my mom, I like to play football in the yard, I like to do those things, that's part of who I am. And sometimes I just want to sit in front of the TV all day, they're going to regulate themselves better. And that's pretty much what my kids do. They regulate themselves pretty good.
Mm-hmm. And really, I think it all boils down to communication. When you have that communication with your kids, that's where you can allow them to do things that you might not want them to do, because you have an understanding of they're setting their own limits as well. And you can talk to them about it. If
Right.
it's not overpowering, you could talk to them about it, because you have that line of communications open, which is really, the essence of.
And allowing them. Yeah. And allowing them. It's like we've got, there's a lot of complaint about the millennial generation that they're lazy, or that they don't know what they're doing, or they don't care, or they're apathetic. There's all those stuff. I don't necessarily agree with that, but one of the things that I have seen is the product of the helicopter kid generation is that a lot of these kids, can't take care of themselves very well. There's this talk about safe spaces in college, for instance. I get it. We get triggered. But if you haven't taught your kid an emotional intelligence and how to deal with being triggered, or how to deal with an uncomfortable situation, or how to make choice based on their values, if you've done it all for them their whole life, then what are you going to do when they go off to college or they go off into the world? There's a huge rise in depression, anxiety, suicide, and psychological issues, brain issues, in kids around 19 years old, typically between the break between when they leave high school and go off to college. And I think one of the reasons that is because a lot of kids just they're sort of thrown into college, and they've not had a lot of opportunity to have to make choices and decisions for themselves. And even if they make bad ones, my kids make a bad one every day, and I just go to them, I go, oh, that wasn't a very wise choice. Or I go, oh, what do you think about that? I mean, they know. And when you empower them to be able to know, it makes me feel better. Like when I send my daughter off to the mall or somewhere with her friends, I feel pretty good knowing that she knows how to suss out a situation and make a wise choice.
We're going to take a short break here. You're listening to Dream Power Radio and my guest, the one and only Betsy Chasse. We'll be right back. What could be more dreamy than a cruise to the mysterious and exotic Cuba? Join me in June for a luxurious 8-night trip on Royal Caribbean's Empress of the Seas. We'll taste the cuisine in Havana, dance to the music in the enchanting cities of Cienfuegos and Santiago de Cuba, and much more. For more information and to sign up for this unforgettable trip, email me at debbie@dreampowerradio.com.
Welcome back to Dream Power Radio with your host, Debbie Spector-Weissman.
Yes, welcome back to Dream Power Radio. I'm your host, Debbie Spector-Weissman, and we're talking with author and filmmaker Betsy Chasse about parenting in today's world. Betsy, you're also a single parent, which raises plenty of issues on its own. What advice do you have for parents who are sharing custody with their kids?
That's a big question. It's really tough. Some people it's really easy for, and, sometimes it's not so easy. I had this really great piece of advice given to me in a parking lot by a random woman about literally 3 days after I decided to get divorced. And she met me, and she said to me, this is what she said, kind of like this. She goes, you always have to think long-term versus short-term. Your kids are going to grow and they're going to evolve. If you just take the high road and look for the long-term win always, which essentially means their best interest, everything is going to work out. And you know what? That is what I always do. I sometimes have to stand up and hold my ground and set my boundaries, which I do, but I also sometimes know when to go. I'm not even going to worry about it, and I'm going to keep moving forward. And that has served me really well.
And have there been conflicts with your ex about the parenting styles?
Oh, I'm sure every day there are conflicts, but the reality is it's only a conflict when you engage. There's no, in the beginning I probably engaged a lot more, but now I don't, because I know that I am the best parent that I can be. And I know that I'm not perfect. That's one of the reasons you and I wrote our book. We talked a lot about that in the Vagina book, as we lovingly call it, is the idea of letting go of this notion that you're going to get it right all the time. I get it wrong a lot of the time. But the other thing that I'm willing to do is go to my kids and go, totally got that wrong. That did not work. Let me try something different. Or I'm sorry. I'm sorry I got frustrated. I'm sorry I yelled. I'm sorry I said that. Because I'm never going to get it right 100% of the time. And so as long as I have trust and faith in who I am and what I'm teaching my kids, and I have trust and faith that my actions come from the place of wanting the best for them and holding their highest good, then, there's going to be, I'm sure a lot of people have problems with the parenting style, and I kind of just let it go. I really, if somebody's got some constructive criticism, I'm happy to take it. But if it's just judgment, I'm too busy for that.
Well, you are very busy, and don't need anything like that. Get back to a little.
Well, and that's something moms have to really take on. Sorry, I was just going to say, if that's the one thing any mom listening takes away from this conversation, you got to be grounded in yourself, because I can tell you that every mom out there is probably judging you. And so let that go, because that will make you insane. That was a big part. I think that was what chapter in our book about that.
Oh, absolutely. And you also brought up another point earlier about perfection. Nobody is perfect. I mean, even, you look and see, that mother across the street, and you say, oh my God, she does everything great and her kids are wonderful. And no, there's things there you don't know. And you can't be perfect. Nobody is perfect. And it's silly to even think that that's even going to happen. But if you lay the foundations like you have with, communication and understanding and treating children as people and not objects, that goes a long way to, make those mistakes, which are inevitable, just be mistakes that you can let go and move on from.
Right. Well, and the idea that we can, I can make a mistake and get frustrated with my daughter or my son and raise my voice or say something I shouldn't because I'm tired, frustrated, cranky, or whatever. And the fact that I can go back to them and just say, you know what, I did that wrong. It also gives them a sense of, oh, I do things wrong, she does things wrong, and everything's going to be okay even if we make a mistake, as long as we acknowledge and grow with it, And so that's a teaching for my kids, because there's so much pressure on them already. There's enough pressure with social media and with school to be perfect and to be amazing and to be in every club and to have everything right, that, your ability as a parent to show them, oh, that didn't go well. Even in work or business, sometimes I'll say, oh, I tried this and it totally failed. And they'll go, you failed? Are you okay? And I'm like, yeah, I'm fine. I'll live through it. But, just showing them that part of life sets them up for a more realistic life. When they don't see the struggle and when they don't see that you have to work for something and when they don't see that you make mistakes too, it sets them up for a real tough time later in life.
Mm-hmm. Well, on a little maybe happier note, with the holidays upon us, do you have any advice for parents on how to get through the holidays with their kids when everybody's home and lots of other crazy things are going on?
So I love the holidays. I do. I'm not a big fan of Thanksgiving, but I like the day after Thanksgiving. That's when I get all excited. And, I just have a lot of fun. Whether, we've gone through Christmases where we have tons of money and Christmases where I don't even know if I'm going to be able to buy them a present or not. And one of the things that was kind of refreshing this year, my son is 11 and my daughter's 14. And we've had all these traditions that we've been doing for years and years and years. And I've been just thinking, well, they're getting older now. We're not going to be so interested in these traditions. And both of them have started coming to me. Okay, so we're decorating the house, right? We're getting the tree, right? We're going to do the cookies. And all those little things that actually aren't based around presents, but they're just our little traditions, they really love. And so, I'm grateful that I made Christmas around these things that we would do that were fun together. Like, we've gone to see Santa since I would have never stopped going to see Santa, but it got a little weird around like 28, 29. So I stopped for a while. But then when I went to have kids, I was like, yes, I get to see Santa again. So even my kids are like, they're 11 and 14. They're like, so when are we going to go see Santa? When is that happening? So it's these traditions, these simple little things that really make the holiday special. And, I just sit in my joy and know that, look, it's not going to be perfect. Someone's going to irritate you. Someone's going to say something that really bugs you. But for me, I just go into the space of going, okay, I have this saying. It says, in the light of all eternity, does it really matter? And so when I'm around family and it's stressful, I just remind myself, it's like, you know what? I have a choice here. I can totally have fun with Christmas or I can get caught up. And I just have fun.
Great. Betsy, this time has just sped by so fast and we're almost at the end of the show. So
I know.
I know. So how can people find out more about you?
So they can go to betsychasse.net. They can go to social media, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, although I'm not a very good Twitter person, I just have to say. And I'm just at Betsy Chasse, and they can find me there. And I'm actually working on a new project right now, which we're looking for candidates for. So if there's anybody who's got experience with or an expert in co-parenting, I'm putting together a new project right now, and they should get in touch with me about it.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Betsy Chasse. I love talking with you all the time. And we have been talking with author, filmmaker, mogul, Betsy Chasse on Dream Power Radio. I'm your host, Debbie Spector-Weissman, and I hope you tune in next time. Until then, sweet dreams, everybody.
You've been listening to Dream Power Radio with your host, Debbie Spector-Weissman. For more information on Debbie or to sign up for her newsletter, go to dreampowerradio.com. This has been Dream Power Radio on the amazing Women and Men of Power Network, the world's leading positive programming network, powered by Raven International.